back, Tony Beall. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Happy Friday, Julia.
It, I, these short weeks where there's a holiday, messes me up. Well, life is a mystery, deviled eggs aside, and we're talking about the mysteries of the donor portfolio, which is a really interesting topic.
Mhm.
And so let's get into it. But before we do, we want to make sure that we thank our presenting sponsors. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Holdings Nonprofit Bank, Interim Executives Academy, Your Part-Time Controller, Fundraisers Friday, and JMT Consulting. I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy, with the amazing Tony Beall, Mr. Nonprofit Consultancy. Okay, drum roll, please. This is the most exciting thing. We launched the Architecture of Fundraising book just within this last week. Tony and I have been collaborating for a long time now. And it's really been a fun project for the two of us to come together. And we actually did this based on the prodding of our very own executive producer, Kevin Pace, which is kind of fun. We tease him a lot. He's behind the camera, but anyway, you can find us on Amazon.com, or you can use the snippety snappity QR code. It'll take you right to it. And I'm really proud of this book. Aren't you, Tony?
I'm super proud of it and the way that it came about. I mean, it's just brilliant. And thank you again to Kevin, to recognize that in all of the shows that we've done together, that there's content there, there's value in the conversations, and there's learning. I mean, that's why we do this, right? Is to pass on what we've learned in our experiences. So I just thought it was brilliant to take 25 of our shows and to use those conversations as the basis to create the content for each of the chapters. So I'm very proud of it too. So.
It's been fun. For those of you who have watched us or maybe listened to us, it seems like Tony and I, live down the block from one another, and we socialize and we chit chat and we gossip and we do all this stuff. But, we've only met each other one time IRL.
True.
And Tony had a speaking gig in Tucson, Arizona. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. He flew into Phoenix Sky Harbor. I picked him up. We grabbed a quick lunch and drove him down to Tucson. So, it was like I hardly ever looked at him, right? And then, bless his heart, he had a speaking gig, and then he was out back to Florida the next day.
On my way back.
Yeah, and so it's really interesting that the two of us could convene our different lives, our different experiences, but a lot of shared experiences.
For sure.
And then to come up with this book. And so it's really been fun for me to collaborate. And I'm not the best collaborator.
Oh, you're a super collaborator. And what I would also say is, we talk about shared experiences and stuff. Nothing compares to our shared passion, I think, for the nonprofit sector, and our shared passion for wanting to see organizations succeed, and our shared passion just for the work that we know goes into running a successful nonprofit, which means ultimately great results for communities in need.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's beautifully said. And before we go on, I will tell you that you mentioned, we were chatting about the root of your drive and passion, and really your personal culture towards philanthropy. And you said something that just I will hold in my heart forever, that your dad was a volunteer fireman,
Mm-hmm.
and that there were his fire boots ready to go by the front door your whole life.
Right by the front door.
Yeah. And that was volunteerism in action. And that's a life or death thing. Mm-hmm. You don't just like, okay, woohoo, let's, see what's cooking. Right. No pun intended. No. I mean, it was really profound to think about how we navigate these lessons and these ideals to mm-hmm. our families and through our community.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. I mean, had a huge impact, on where I am today,
Yeah.
for
Isn't
sure.
that cool? It's
Uh-huh.
remarkable.
Thanks
Well,
for
let's
bringing
get, yeah, I mean, really, truly, I can see that. I can just see it. Let's get into this. I want to talk about the donor portfolio. A lot of times we call it the book of business. Um, I was in my early 30s and somebody called me up and said, "Hey, I'd like to take you out to lunch because you're in my portfolio."
it.
And I was like, "What?" And
Because you're in my portfolio. I might have framed that a little differently, but
well, first of all, I did not know what that meant. And second of all, I kind of got offended. I felt like there was like this secret thing going on and that my name was being bandied about and I didn't like it.
Mhm.
So I all these decades later, and there have been a lot of I kind of have a negative sense of it in relationship to I think donors don't know this, that this is one of the tools that we use.
Yeah,
You know,
they probably don't. Yeah, and I can understand why you would feel that way, because it's contrary to all of the relationship conversations that we have, in that it just sounds so, I don't know, sterile, or like that person saying you're in my portfolio, so I'm calling you because I'm just checking the box on the portfolio that I reached out to you. So there's a lot of times when we talk about things like portfolios, anything related to kind of impact selling, where we talk about a structure or a process, a lot of times that does feel a little icky. But we have to just remind ourselves, right, that these are tools of the trade.
yeah.
These are things that make us better at what we do. But so I totally understand why you would feel that way, because it is contrary to that deep relationship piece of the work that we talk about all the time. But this is a tool to help us maintain that.
I agree. And I don't care how big or small your organization is. I think it's something you really do need to be thinking about, just in thinking of it as a tool, right? And understanding that your donors might not understand this tool or even know that it exists. So
Right.
let's talk about the portfolio process and what it actually does. We called it a tool, but what does that tool do?
Yeah, well, it helps us understand our donor base. Uh, Much of what is on the screen right now and part of this deck is they reduce overlap, they define a pipeline, they help you segment your donors, right? Donors at different levels have different needs. And so it allows you to segment your donor base. It shows cycles. So, it really helps identify lapsed donors. If you don't have, some type of CRM or portfolio system, and how do you know? And unless you're all of a sudden like, I haven't seen Mrs. Smith at a breakfast gathering in, 3 months or something. Again, just whatever comes in my head.
Yeah.
And it measures activity. So we've talked also in some of our episodes, Julia, about things like KPIs and OKRs and measurements of success. And so these types of portfolios and this technology also allows us to just monitor activity and the work that's being done, not so much as a watchdog, but as a way to gauge, again, the success of our strategies, to help us understand where team members might need additional professional development. Maybe we have to shift our messaging in something. So again, the measurement of this activity is not necessarily just about the individual performance, but what it tells us through data about many things that we're doing to help promote our mission and our cause.
Yeah, I love the way you kind of wove that journey through because the way you express this, it's not a one thing, right? I mean, it's a lot of different things to be thinking about as opposed to just a quote unquote list.
Right.
And so I think that's the more organic way to be thinking about this, you know.
And when you said more than just a list, I think about the many times I worked with small and medium-sized organizations where it really was a list. And I remember, when you talk about a book of business, It was a 3-ring binder
Mhm.
that would have donor information in it, and you would just flip through. Now, we were still mindful of, there weren't credit card numbers or super, social security numbers or anything like that, but just a place where, there was information about a donor, handwritten notes from when folks had met with the donor. So it's just so
Yeah.
important to have that information.
You brought that up, and I was thinking back to a board I served on where once a quarter that book of business would be delivered to the board meeting during the pizza dinner before we got started, right? And everybody, that book, big 3-ring binder, would go around to
Okay.
all the board members, and you'd be like, if you know anybody in here or you have a contact, we're not saying go out and ask them for anything, but we just want to make whatever alignments are. And maybe we would use you to invite them for a tour, or maybe we would use them to sit at your table for the annual luncheon, or you know what I mean? But it was really interesting because it was fascinating to see how different we were as board members and who we knew, right?
Mm-hmm.
And who
Mm-hmm.
we didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be honest about that too.
Yeah,
So
and those conversations also really help with stewardship. So again, once you've received the gift and now you're having multiple touch points with a donor, having someone on the board that knows them, that can say to you, they love Italian food, and then you're like, oh my gosh, this Italian chef has just launched this Italian cookbook. Maybe I'll send this donor this Italian cookbook. So again, it's the things that you learn through the connectivity like that, that really deepen the relationships and allow the donor to really be seen in a much more personal way.
yeah, I agree with you. Well, this is another one of the mysteries I want to get into, and that is the number of donors in a fundraiser's portfolio. I have been asked this question just in passing at events, with fundraisers. Every time I attend one of my local AFP meetings or luncheons, I swear to God, somebody asked me this question.
Sure.
And I think it is a very interesting aspect to be asked this question, because it sounds to me like we don't really understand how these portfolios work, how they're managed, and we get caught up on this number.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think?
So a lot of, and there are some averages out there. And I think the last time we talked about this, I had done some research. I'm going to reflect on my notes again, just so I make sure I don't mess up any of these numbers. In my experience, Julia, a lot of times when this conversation comes up, it's because a fundraiser or a C-suite individual is worried about burnout.
Wow, light bulb. I think you're right. I think you're
And
right.
so the fundraiser is looking for information to take to the C-suite and say the average number of donors in a portfolio for an individual with my job title would be X, Y, and Z. However, it is this. So they're looking for that data to either help support a case for hiring additional team members or looking at how the donors are segmented. Many times I think that question is a cry for help.
Okay, you like hair on fire moment. I think you're totally right. And I hadn't put two and two together, but now I'm going back through when this question comes up. Holy moly. That
And,
kind of
and
makes me sad.
and I'm sure we have some viewers or listeners that are like, oh, I wish I had to worry about a portfolio and how many, because I'm the person. So every single fundraiser, comes through my desk or I touch. So I want to be, mindful and appreciative of those folks that are the one fundraiser in their organization. And we'll talk even if you are the only person raising money and managing these relationships. In a little while in this conversation, Julia, we'll talk about why it's important that you still have this kind of process in place or some type of CRM. But going back to the original question, which I've been kind of talking all around. So major gift officers typically will have 100 to 150 active donors in their portfolio. A planned giving officer may have anywhere from 75 to 125. So again, planned giving is a little bit less.
Yeah.
And there are a number of different reasons for some of those. And with planned giving, I would suggest that one of those reasons why it should be longer is because of the amount of time invested in a relationship to secure that type of gift commitment.
Right.
Then principal or principal gift officers. So if you're thinking about capital campaigns or something like that, where every ask you're looking for 1.5, 2, or $3 million, those folks are usually going to be 25 to 50 maximum.
Okay.
And then your annual giving or mid-level donors or fundraisers are going to have anywhere from 200 to 400 donors. And that makes sense to me. So I reflect on my fundraising experience, and I think I've shared that when I started in nonprofit work, it was mass market events. So I was really responsible for sponsorships, partnerships. But if I was doing a walk for the animals, I also was responsible for the 250 or 300 people that participated in that walk for the animals. And so now it's my responsibility to figure out how am I going to now kind of get them to move up the giving pyramid, or how am I going to stay engaged with them? How am I going to get them to commit to a challenge next year? Maybe they raised $1,000 at the walk this year. How am I going to motivate them and empower them, to want to raise $2,000?
Yeah.
The following year. So, and a lot of that is done in kind of mass market marketing. A lot of that is done through, lack of a better term, kind of cookie cutter messaging.
Sure.
When you're talking about that number of people. But that's just kind of, what I found through doing research, and still kind of holds true to when the last time we had this conversation around this particular topic.
Yeah, I really appreciate that because those numbers reflect what your actual work entails with these donors. It's not just this arbitrary number. It's like, okay, it's stepping back and saying, okay, well, what is it that you do with the donors, right? So that you can navigate this and really understand. And part of this navigation is a CRM issue. To me, this is the starting point tool. If you don't have something that will help you manage this information, you're going to go back to that spiral notebook with handwritten notes, right? And this is like one of those things that I feel like it really helps you understand what's going on. And to your point, might prevent some of that burnout because it can kind of illuminate what's occurring. And I think that's really a critical piece.
No, and there are so many. I mean, Bloomerang, our sponsor, is just one example of companies out there that are just providing terrific service and incredible products to the market. And earlier I said, there's something else I want to mention, whether you're a staff of 1,000 or a staff of 1. These CRMs are so important when we talk about succession planning and the intellectual property that exists with your current team.
Yeah.
And so, right now I'm the sole fundraiser, but I aspire to work in higher ed with a larger team of fundraisers. I aspire to be an executive director or CEO, and that's probably not going to happen in my small shop. I'm going to need to look elsewhere in order for me to have those career opportunities and that growth potential.
Right. And I love that you said that because it's an opportunity to be more thoughtful about what's going on and strategic as opposed to just task management. And it's really
very
easy
much so.
To get in the task management aspect of it. Let's move on and talk about something else, data hygiene and metrics. I'm thinking back to middle school health classes, but data hygiene is where it's at. We mentioned in the green room, that adage, garbage in, garbage out. If you are not working your CRM, if you are not putting in the right information and updating things, it doesn't help anyone, especially your organization. So we've listed a couple things here about what those metrics should be tracking, everything from the contacts made per month, the number of asks made, which is not the same as contacts per month, right?
Correct.
A contact could be just like, how you doing? Come to this event, come on to our tour. I read about you in the local business journal, whatever. The ask made is something different when you are
Mhm.
actually doing something concrete in terms of making an ask towards a donor and securing a gift. Dollars raised versus the goal. What does that look like? Donor
Mhm.
retention, something that is essential. And
Mhm.
then pipeline prospects. What are you adding in? How are you building that? These are things that I feel like we kind of know we need to do, or it's in the back of our mind, but it's not always a concrete action. What do you think
And
about
again, yeah, again, when we talk about succession planning, how important this is. If I'm stepping into the shoes of someone that's been managing some of these relationships
that? Yeah.
for the last 3 or 4 years, I'm going to want to go into the database and look at this donor and be able to see that they've made either X number of dollars worth of investment or gifts to the organization, or that they've made 50 gifts. A lot of times I like to speak to the number of gifts versus the dollar amount. So if I'm meeting a donor for the first time, I might say something like, I see over the course of the last 5 years that you've given to the organization 7 times. Thank you so much for that commitment.
Mhm.
Because those 7 times, that combined dollar amount may not sound like a lot. It may not be as impressive as the number of times that they've given. So that's why I say think about whether you want to use the actual dollar amount or the number of times that they've given to
I
the
like that.
organization, and
Yeah.
honoring the years of commitment. Again, maybe they only gave $50. I don't want to say only. Maybe they gave $50 because I don't want to minimize that.
Right,
Maybe they
right.
gave $50, once a year for the last 10 years. Well, we're going to celebrate 10 years of commitment
Yeah.
to the organization. And we don't know that if we don't have good hygiene in our data and if we don't have a good place to store data. And the other thing that I'll say about CRMs and how they have evolved is many of them reside on an app now. So it's not as if you end a donor meeting and have to wait to go back to the office to upload all of your information. You
Right.
pull up, the CRM on your phone. You have some drop-down menus. You put in what you've done and what you've accomplished. Add some notes about the conversation, and off you go.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that because I worked on a really awesome project about 10 years ago for a global nonprofit. They had a CRM that they had built in-house, but no one would use it. So I actually was part of a team that was helping to develop a dashboard that would be forward facing and then connect to the CRM, something that was going to be easier for the development team to kind of interact with and use, because they just wouldn't go into the in-house built CRM uh,
Yeah.
for what I mean, there were a whole lot of reasons actually, but that
Well,
CRM, so much time had been built or spent in building that CRM, they weren't going to scrap it. So we had to come up with an easy kind of, again, dashboard overlay fix for
wow.
what they had built internally.
Well, I love that you brought that up because that is a real issue. If this is not accessible and you haven't trained up your development team or encouraged them in a certain way to understand how this works, yeah, it's going to be just a dreaded thing, and it's not going to be an opportunity that everybody really wants. Let's talk about dun, 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 dun,
Da, 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 da.
dun, 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 the portfolio divorce. What happens when the portfolio, maybe there's somebody else on the team that says, I should have them because I have a better relationship. Or maybe it's just not a good fit, right? Because that happens. I mean, we're
It
social beings
does.
and there's no harm, no foul. Sometimes you can't articulate it. You just are like, wow, we're never going to jive on this. I think sometimes too, and I'll call this out right now. We live in a very politically polarized world, and I was with somebody 3 weeks ago very, very prominent donor in our community, and I was kind of lobbying for something, and he said something that freaked me out because I thought
Mhm.
it was just the opposite of what my value system stated, and I couldn't really get past it, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah, no, it's true. And what you bring up is really important, especially in today's climate, is we have to be kind of mindful of the conversations that we engage in or the conversations that we start. Uh, and that's really challenging also in a space, especially from someone like me who is consistently promoting authenticity. So where do you draw the line with being your true authentic self
Yeah.
and then not having conversations that just you're like, oh, bite your tongue, don't say it, don't say it. So how do you navigate authenticity with some of these other kind of variables? But at the end of the day, it is all about relationships. So
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong, no ego hurt. If for some reason you're just not connecting with someone on your portfolio, the
Mhm.
mission is more important than your ego. And so you need to recognize that, own it, and then look at others around you. Again, if you're a shop of one, maybe that relationship should be managed by a board member. And a lot
Mhm.
of times, those smaller to mid-sized organizations, board members are engaging in that way. They're
Mhm.
having that level of ownership because there is no other infrastructure to support it. But just removing ego from it and saying this isn't connecting, and it might even be you. Be that honest. Like, I can't
Mhm.
have a conversation with this person. Like, they say too many things that just spark me in not a good way if I'm going to remain authentic to who I am.
Mhm.
And so the best thing for the community and for our mission is for them to look at someone else within the organization that can support this relationship and
Mhm.
manage it.
Yeah, beautifully said. And I think that humanizes it. It brings it forward to make it much more understandable for everyone. And no harm, no foul, because you're pushing it off onto the mission and taking that personality away, and so the ego. And so thank you for helping us to kind of understand that. You know, this is an amazing part of how we got to the architecture of fundraising, the new book that Tony and I have collaborated on. um, Pardon me, choked me up. um, each and every day on the nonprofit show, and certainly on Fundraisers Friday, we talk about these things that are really central to the success of our nonprofits. And so the architecture of fundraising is a collaboration, as I mentioned, between the two of us. You can get it on Amazon. You can scan this QR code and it will come right to your home. Look at that. Tony's holding it up. It's,
I mean, you
it's
talked about getting choked up, Julia. If you wanted to see a grown man cry, you should have seen me when I opened up the Amazon package with this book. I mean, I'm just so proud of it and so honored to have collaborated with you on this. So, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. I'm very, very proud of it. And again, a brilliant mind like Tony Beall to collaborate with us at the American Nonprofit Academy is really powerful for us, and so it's been just a fun thing. So you'll hear more and more about it. I mean, we're going to be chit chatting about this definitely. We chit chat here every day because we have these amazing partners, and they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Holdings Nonprofit Bank, Interim Executives Academy, Your Part-Time Controller, Fundraisers Friday, and JMT Consulting. These are the folks that are with us day in and day out. And as we move towards the end of this week, the start of a new week very shortly, we want to leave with this message. And it goes like this: to stay well so you can do well.